The Princess of the High Seas, from 8 Princesses and a Magic Mirror, by me, Natasha Farrant. All the children on the island kingdom of Rain were given their first boat on their 12th birthday. It was one of those facts of life there, like midwinter bonfires and snowdrops in spring. The sight of the dories and cockles out in Tarnsey Bay on a clear, still day, their bright hulls reflected in the water, the excited young voices calling out across the waves, were a comforting reminder that island ways continued as they always had and always would. The only children not to receive a boat were the Rainian princes and princesses. Boats for islanders are a matter of survival, for fishing and trade, but the sea is not always kind. Boats bring death, too. The same tradition which insisted that every island child must have a boat also stated that the royal children must not. No one had ever questioned it, and at the time our story starts, 3 of the 4 princesses of Rain were perfectly happy with this rule. Catriona, Elsa, and Isabel had no interest in going about on the water. It was not something princesses did. Princesses boarded boats only if they had to. For example, when they left to marry a prince, and when they did, someone else sailed for them, just as someone else always led their horses when they went out riding, and boiled water for their tea. A princess's job was to stay safe, doing things like embroidering covers for chairs, or finding new ways of using feathers in hats. Catriona, Elsa, and Isabel thought all of this was delightful. But then there was Ellen. Ellen, unlike her older sisters, did not accept things just because they had always been so. Ellen questioned everything. Why must she sleep at night and wake by day? Why could she not wear clothes to run in instead of long skirts and petticoats? Or paddle on sunny days like the island children, or watch the spring regatta with the servants from the roof where everyone knew the view was best? It was no surprise to anyone when, on her 12th birthday, Ellen demanded, "Why may I not have a boat like all the other children?" The older princesses giggled. The king sighed. Only the queen said nothing. "Because it has always been so," the king said when he had finished sighing. "Try to be more like your sisters." Ellen, who was not a polite kind of princess, said she didn't see why her father got to decide what she should do rather than letting her decide for herself, and swept out of the breakfast room through the door to the servants' corridor. She stomped along a dark passage to the wine cellar, through another door, then ran and tumbled and stumbled down steep stone steps cut into the cliff until she reached the castle's quay, where she flung herself to the ground and burst into tears. Of all the questions she had ever asked, this had been the most important, because Ellen loved the sea more than anything in the world. She had thought her parents understood. She had hoped so much that they would make an exception. Her tears spent, she sat with her knees drawn up to her chest, facing the waves. She wondered if anyone would recognize her, if she chopped off all her hair and ran away to sea, or if it would be possible to steal a boat, or even secretly to build one. She didn't hear her mother until the Queen sat down beside her. Queen Grizzle was not from Rain, but from Hen, where the rules are different, and royals are let loose upon the water as soon as they are strong enough to pull an oar. She had been sorry to give up sailing when she married, and it pained her that her daughters would never know the same pleasure she had. As Catriona, Elsa, and Isabel's 12th birthdays had come and gone, she had said nothing because they had not. But faced with Ellen's sorrow, she knew that she could keep quiet no longer. "The sea has salt in it enough already, you know," she murmured. "So no more tears, youngling. Come away with me to Bragg's shipyard, where only yesterday I saw a fine dory, an excellent beginner boat. We shall look at it together, and if you like it, it shall be yours." Ellen caught her breath. Very, very slowly, she turned to gape at her mother. Grizzle held out a hand. You are a child of hen too, you know. The day was grey and overcast, but Ellen's beam cut through the gloom like summer sun. The dory was perfect, trim and compact, built for steadiness rather than speed. It would be a good teacher for a student who had everything to learn. Ellen's heart leapt with love the moment she saw it. "But are you sure?" she whispered. Her hands curled tight over the gunwale. She could not bear it if her mother changed her mind. "Quite sure, my love," replied the Queen. "So now there are only her colours left to choose, and her name. What will you have?" Ellen chose light blue for the hull to match the clear sky breaking through the clouds, with yellow sails and oar-tips to match the sun. Shyly, she gave her mother the honour of choosing the boat's name. Grizzle frowned as she thought, then smiled. "Princess of the High Seas," she said, "painted in gold for luck." Princess of the High Seas. Ellen savoured the roll of the words on her tongue. The king was furious when he found out, and the islanders were shocked. But Grizzle did not back down. She asked one thing of her daughter, that she would not go out beyond the calm waters of Taransi Bay. For a while, Ellen obeyed. But she was quick to learn, and the need to venture out of the sheltered harbour was like an itch. By midsummer she was exploring neighbouring coves. By August's end she was rowing in and out of sea caves, pulling up to rest on hidden beaches, or bobbing in pools formed by the tide, where seals and otters nosed about the hull, and gulls perched on the princess's sides to preen. Ellen was brown as a nut, her hair bleached white from the salt, and her limbs as lithe and tough as the coil of rope she kept for emergencies in the dory's watertight locker. "No good will come of it," grumbled the king, and the other princesses agreed. Queen Grizzle did not scold Ellen for breaking her promise, but waited for what she knew must happen. The storm came at the beginning of September. It was the worst rain had seen in years. For 2 days lightning ripped through thunderclouds, driving rain like bullets into the roaring sea. Inland, roads turned to streams, streams to rivers. No craft put out in such weather. Instead, islanders pulled their boats high onto the strand, then barred their doors and shutters, praying the damage would not be too great. In the castle, Ellen sat huddled by a turf fire in the watchtower. She loved the tower, because it had windows on 3 sides overlooking the sea, and she could pretend she was in the crow's nest of one of the merchant schooners which sailed to Taransi on their voyages around the world. It was her greatest wish to sail on such a ship. On the 3rd day the storm eased. Weather vanes still spun in the unsettled wind, and the purple blue of the waves warned of evil currents. But cottage doors opened, and the islanders inspected the damage. There were roofs to mend, fences to repair, fallen trees to saw into logs. No one had an eye for the sea but Ellen, daydreaming in the watchtower, skimming the waves in her imaginary schooner, cutting through the shimmering ocean like a gull on the wing. And look! Here was another ship on the horizon, a 2-master like her own. The fire in the grate hissed. Ellen leapt to her feet. The ship was going much too fast, listing to starboard and heading straight for the rocks at the end of the headland. All islanders, royal or not, know what to do when a ship is in peril. Ellen dashed across the room to the bell rope, seized it in both hands and pulled, and pulled, and pulled. When the whole castle was ringing with the clang of the alarm bell, she gathered her skirts to her knees and raced down the stairs, yelling, "Ship in peril! Ship in peril to the east of the headland!" As she burst into the hall, the rescue crew were already running for the main gates, making for Taransi Bay, where their mates were pushing the island's 3 lifeboats into the water. The boats were built for storm and tempest, with 8 strong oarsmen each. But as Ellen slipped in among the crowd, the mood was sombre. Every island family had lost a loved one to the sea. Was it wrong, though, wondered Ellen, to feel a little bit excited? In, out tumbled the tide, while a handful of men battled wind and waves. The troubled schooner surged in the swell. For a few seconds they saw her outlined against the grey-streaked sky. Then she crashed from sight. The islanders bowed their heads. Only Ellen kept watching. What must it feel like to conquer such waves? All the lifeboats had vanished too. No, she glimpsed 2 of them, but where was the third? "She's gone!" The woman standing beside Ellen began to wail. "The Florrie's gone, and my Duncan with her." But there was the Florius well, pulling ahead from the Gordania and the Gavinia, and every last person on the strand cheered at the sight of her. There was no sight, though, of the schooner. "She's run into the reef!" A runner came down from Tarronsey Lighthouse. "The lads are picking up the crew. Who knows how many they'll come home with?" Come home they did, though, each and every one of the rescuers, and with them all of the schooner's crew. Or so they thought. "Well done, lads." Brack, the shipbuilder, was also captain of the lifeboat crew. Teeth chattering from cold, he walked among them, shaking hands, slapping shoulders. Islanders rushed forward with brandy and blankets. The king descended from the castle with Queen Grizzle and the princesses, announced that today and for the days to come the castle kitchens would be open to all, that the sailors might eat their fill. It was only when the final count was made that the schooner captain realised his son was missing. Brack's heart sank. The wind was calming, the colour of the waves returning to normal, but his lads were exhausted, and surely this was tempting luck too far. "We can't leave the boy, Brack." It was Duncan, master of the Florrie. And he was right, of course. "I need 7 volunteers," Brack shouted. But nobody was listening, because another cry had gone up. A pale blue and yellow dory was already on the waves, letters of gold glinting on its prow, and a small princess at the oars. Ellen laughed as she rowed. This was mad. It was terrifying. It was exciting. The princess of the high seas rode the waves like a leaf on an angry wind, Ellen's stomach flipping with every pitch and pull, but she never thought of turning back. She knew exactly where the boy would be. The schooner had foundered by Mendel Rocks. Given the incoming tide and the current, he would be washed up on the secret beach at the foot of the Black Cliffs. It was one of Ellen's favourite places. She could row there in her sleep if she had to, but it would disappear with a high tide, and then the boy would be lost. All she had to do was keep her head and keep rowing. And beat the tide. And hope that he was still alive. A wave broke over the side, catching her full in the face. She dropped her oar and lurched to grab it before it vanished. The princess rocked as she thumped back into her seat. Ellen's lip was cut and her mouth was full of blood. But there was the beach, and there, as she had known he would be, was the boy, face down in the sand. A wave hurtled the princess towards the shore. Ellen raised her oars. "Ahoy there!" The undertow swept her back out. Ellen lowered the oars, pulled round to face the beach, and raised them again as the next wave carried her in. "Ahoy there! Ahoy! Ahoy!" Still the boy did not move, and Ellen could have wept. Dead! Drowned when she was so close. "Ahoy there! Get up, you idiot! Don't be dead! Get up!" He stirred, raised himself on all fours, retched in the water. Another wave broke, and he collapsed. There was almost no beach left. Get up! Get up! I can't do this on my own!" He was on his knees again, staggering to his feet, limping through the shallows. Ellen threw her rope. He caught it on the next wave, pulled himself to the boat. She heaved him over the side, and he tumbled to the floor. "Ahoy there!" he croaked, with a flicker of a smile. "Ahoy!" she grinned back, and her life changed forever. Next day, on a calm sea, the coastguards rowed out again to drag the remains of the schooner back to shore. With a huge hole in her hull, her interiors ruined, Her masts broken and her sails torn to tatters, the gallant Eloise was ruined, but not entirely wrecked. "It'll take months to make her seaworthy again," Brack warned, "and when she is, she'll be more new ship than old." The Eloise's sailors found lodgings where they could with the villagers, but the officers, including the captain and his son, were guests at the castle. All through the autumn and the winter, Ellen and the boy, his name was Ralph, carried on the conversation which had started with those first ahoys. While the good weather lasted, she showed him the treasures of her island, the sea caves where the echoes of the waves sounded like music, the cliffs where the gulls nested, and the burrows to which the puffins returned every summer to raise their young. When winter came and the boats were put away, they sat in the watchtower and he told her what it was like to travel the oceans from east to west and back again, to see the colour of the sea change from grey to clearest blue. He told her about the desert he had once visited with his father, where marble palaces glowed like fire in the setting sun, and about forests full of parrots which screeched like a person being murdered, and which could be trained to mimic human speech. "They like the rudest words best," he said, and Ellen snorted with laughter. Ralph spoke of docks where merchants came from all over the world to trade in silks and spices, of whales and dolphins and turtles and flying fish, and of days on end at sea when all that happened was the rising of the sun and its setting. Ellen longed for that most of all. "Take me with you when you leave," she begged, and Ralph said that he would, and that together they would sail the world. "It will end badly," said the king, watching them together. "I don't like it." And still the queen said nothing. Spring arrived, and the gallant Eloise was ready. With her black hull and white sails, she was the smartest ship Ellen had ever seen. The day before she was due to sail, the captain invited the royal family aboard, and she ran all over the Eloise like a little child, delighting in the smallest details: the shine of the ship's wheel, the coop where the chickens were kept, the neat galley kitchen. She leaned over the prow to admire the restored figurehead of Eloise herself. She slid down narrow stairs to inspect the hold. She admired the spick and span captain's cabin, and swung in one of the sailors' hammocks. "Which is to be mine?" she asked. No one spoke. Ralph stared at his father. The king stared at his feet. When Grizzle gently laid her hand on her daughter's arm, Ellen knew that there was no hammock for her, and never had been. "Dearest, you are still so very young," said Grizzle. "More to the point," grumbled the king, "you are a princess." "Pa won't take you against your parents' wishes," Ralph explained later, when they were sitting in the Princess for the last time on the beach where Ellen had rescued him. "Not when he's accepted their hospitality for so long. He says it would be a betrayal of trust." "I could stow away," said Ellen. "I thought of that already," Ralph replied gloomily. "But you'd have to come out sooner or later, and then Pa would only bring you back." Next day, as he boarded the Eloise, he gave her a present, a gold mirror on a piece of scarlet ribbon. "I pulled it up in a fishing net," he said. "It's proper treasure. Keep it safe for me until I come back." And with those words, he sailed away. Spring turned to summer, summer to autumn, and winter came again. Many ships docked on Rhine, but none with the gallant Eloise. At first Ellen wore the mirror on her belt to remind herself that Ralph would be back soon, but with the passing of each season something in her passed too, and she put the mirror away. She could not bear to look at it, just as she could not bear to watch the sea. When spring returned, she did not race to the shipyard to reclaim her overwintered boat, but sat meekly with her sisters and asked to learn to sew. Grizzle helped her thread a needle. "Sailors need to sew too, you know," she murmured. Sailcloth does not mend itself." "I shall never sail again," said Ellen. Along came summer, and as Ellen sat quietly sewing, a screech fit to freeze blood ripped through the castle, followed by a stream of filthy language. "Goodness!" gasped Catriona. "Who can it be?" tutted Elsa. Isabel fanned herself with her stitching and looked as if she might faint. Ellen's heart skipped a beat. Somewhere in the string of unrepeatable language, she thought she had heard her name. There was another screech and more swearing, and then, "I come for the Princess Ellen!" Hope smote her like a blow to the chest. Dropping her needlework, she leapt from her chair as a red-faced footman entered. "If you please," he stammered, there appears to be a parrot." The parrot was the first of many gifts Ralph sent Ellen over the years. It was followed by a box of spices, each carefully labelled, and then by books of maritime history, maps, more maps, and a compass. Ellen, the mirror once more hanging at her belt, read every word and memorized every chart. She brought the Princess of the High Seas out of hibernation and sailed further, better, and faster than she had ever sailed before. And when 6 years after he had left, Ralph returned at the helm of his own command, she was ready, and pressed the mirror into his hand, and took her place at his side. "Preposterous!" railed the king. "A princess of rain!" And still Queen Grizzle said nothing, though it grieved her to lose her favourite child. She had always known that if you give a dreamer hope, her dreams will get bigger and bigger, and that if you give an adventurous child a boat, sooner or later she will sail away. Over the high seas they sailed around the world, with the mirror always hanging from its ribbon on Ellen's belt. But one stormy day, riding the waves off the coast of a new continent, the ribbon broke, and the mirror fell deep, 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 and disappeared. The end.